Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching us from. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Dr. Mercy Mumba. I'm so excited to have this fireside chat. Of course, this is our December fireside chat. As you guys know, we have these chats every fourth Saturday of the month. And today I have some really amazing guests with me. I have Miss Aram Sene and I have Dr. Blessing Kasenge who will introduce themselves in just a little bit. So just to get us going, I want to remind everyone that you are part of this conversation. We want you to use the chat feature on the live session. Go ahead and share with your friends, share this live session with your friends, your networks, so we can all learn together. So, our topic for today is civic engagement as a strategy for personal and professional development. And I'm so excited to be talking about this because one of the things that I hear from people is they want to be engaged in civic activities, but most of the time, people think of civic engagement as only political engagement. And today, we're going to have some really amazing conversations about the different continuums of civic engagement, social engagement that you can participate in that will actually be beneficial for you personally and professionally to grow yourself as a professional. So, without further ado, I would like our speakers to introduce themselves. They have really significant bios and expertise related to the topic that we're talking about today, but I would not be able to do them justice. And so I want them to go ahead and introduce themselves, and we'll start with Aram. So, Aram, just tell us who you are, where you are, what you do, and what brings you to this topic of civic engagement. And when you're done, and social justice, because I know you also do a lot of social justice work with your organization. And then we'll ask Blessing to introduce himself and give us just some background of also how he found himself in this space. So, Aram, over to you.
Thank you, Mercy. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for having me in this conversation. My name is Arame Sene. I'm from Senegal, based there. I'm a committed socioeconomist, and I'm convinced that every African citizen has the potential to become a leader of change. I really believe that. I'm also a Nashoka youth champion, and I co-founded a Social Change Factory and the Consortium Jeunesse Sénégal, organizations based in Senegal and working to empower young people in Senegal and also in other countries in Africa.
Awesome, awesome. Blessing, tell us who you are and what you do and what brings you to this conversation on civic engagement and social justice.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Messi. It's really a great honor and a great privilege to be on this platform with you. So my name is Blessings Kasenge. I'm a medical doctor by profession from Zambia. I'm currently working as a clinical research mentor at the Center for Infectious Disease Research in Zambia, particularly in around non-communicable diseases and HIV. And away from that, I'm also a young leader. I'm currently serving as a Sadiq Youth Parliamentarian. I represent Zambian youth on the Sadiq Youth Parliament. And so I'm really involved in advocacy, involved in research, and speaking for young people. And of course, I'm also working with various youth-led organizations here in Zambia. For example, I'm a programs manager at an organization called Be Relevant Africa, where we are training young leaders. We have got a leadership academy, and basically we're in the business of bringing up young leaders, empowering them with skills so that they can be able to make a difference in their lives. I personally believe that we must all be able to stand for something in life, because I believe there comes a time, according to what Martin Luther King says, when silence becomes a betrayal. And so really, I'm out there to see how best I can speak on various issues and get involved in change. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Blessing, and thank you, Aram, for that conversation and just wonderful introduction. So I would like to actually get our conversation started with just understanding what is civic engagement. Like I said, there's a lot of a misconception on what civic engagement is and what those parameters are. So in your work and in just, real life definitions, what does civic engagement mean to you and what does it look like on a day-to-day basis?
So maybe I will start. If you just take the definition of civic engagement, it's working together, working as an individual in political or non-political actions. It could be to protect public values, to make a change in your communities, or just to bring a solution for a problem. So we really have this definition included non-political and political actions.
Yeah, and of course, just to add on what Arame had said, I personally believe that there's so many problems that are currently prevailing in the world, and even in our communities, we've got so many challenges. So civic engagement for me entails, first of all, identifying a problem within your community, within your country, and after identify that problem, you then come up with a solution that's going to be able to address that particular problem. So when you talk about civic engagement, we're basically talking about the action or the process of you identifying a problem, and you developing a solution for that particular problem, and you creating impact to see how best you can change the lives of those that you're serving in the communities and around you in general.
So I hear what both of you are saying, but it seems to me that civic engagement does require someone to have a niche or a topic area that they're interested in to bring social change, social justice, and that engagement to actually implement policy advocacy as well as any type of engagement within the community. So how does one go about identifying a cause or a topic area that they want to be engaged in with civically, or some of the things that they want to do to bring social justice?
All right, that's a very good question. Okay, I think Aram can go first.
No, go ahead, Blake.
All right, yeah. So I was basically saying that for me, I think that's a very important question because we see so many young people struggle to identify an area of focus. They struggle to really identify what difference they can make. And this, of course, goes even to the rest of the population. And so when we talk about you identifying a niche or identifying an area of focus, I believe it also goes down to passion and purpose. First of all, it's very important that you must be able to understand what your purpose is, and you must be able to understand some of those issues, for example, that are quite pressing to you. So one of the things that I do also is that I'm an African young ambassador on tobacco control. And I've really seen that I'm really quite passionate, particularly in this area, because I've seen just how it has impacted many young people. And I've seen that this is something that I could do something about. And it very much aligns also with my professional aspect. Being trained as a medical doctor, I'm able to understand really the impacts and, of course, witness firsthand just what tobacco has done to many people. And so this was basically how I identified a particular area to be able to speak and advocate for. So there's an aspect of passion, an aspect of purpose, and of course, an aspect of alignment, you being able to align it to, for example, what you have studied, or for example, what you have trained to become.
Aram, what can you add to that in terms of identifying your niche, your topic areas, and the things that you're passionate about to start engaging with?
I think it depends, because sometimes you just don't have a social call or a calling to do social actions or to be engaged. But if you are a student or in your community where you live, you always have some organizations in place or that you can join and see what they do and try to see if you can, find something that you want to do with them. But when it's your passion, I think you are always you will find a way to be able to be engaged. But if you don't have a calling to do something or to be involved in some area, you can just go to organizations in your schools or in your neighborhood to see what you can do and how you can help.
Awesome. So, one of the things that I really like about you guys being here today is you've actually taken very different paths to civic engagement and social justice initiatives that you're interested in and that you're engaging in. So, for example, Aram, you have a whole organization that's operational, working in 18 different countries, being featured by CNN and all of those great accolades. Whereas we have Blessing, who has a professional career as a medical doctor, he's doing that full time, has a full time job, but still has the ability to engage in things that he's passionate about. And so I want to hear from both of you, and we can start with Aram. What is the process of, if somebody wants to go the route that you've gone, the process of building an organization, being a change agent that is globally recognized and actually have impact in those areas that you're passionate about? And then we'll move to Blessing in terms of how do you manage this I don't want to call it double life, but this extra, it's not extracurricular activities, but this extra passions that you have while still maintaining employment and doing all of these things. So, Aram, talk us through the process of building something personally and growing it and having impact in that way. And then we'll move to Blessing for him to share his perspectives on how you can balance employment and civic engagement and so on and so forth.
So for me, I started my civic engagement when I was in college. During my first year, I had to do my resume and I didn't have any experiences. So for me, it was important to have experiences to add to my resume. So I had a call from my childhood friend and he told me that he thinks we can do an activity in a rural area in Senegal. To help young people and to assist them because they were doing their A level. So I just thought, oh, it's a great opportunity. I can do that. And then I will be able to put in my resume that I had an experience in a rural area in Senegal. So this is how I had my first civic engagement activity. And it was just a calling for me because I really like that. I really like to be with them, to talk with them, to have this feeling of being useful for these young people. And I was also young because I was in my first year of university. So then I went back to France and I decided to be a volunteer in a social center for also children. And I was doing my studies and also being a volunteer in various organizations there. And after I had my master degree, I came back in Senegal and also with again this friend Sobel, we had, and other young people, we had this idea to create our organization and to create programs that will empower young people. It was important for us to talk to us, simply to talk to other young people. We were really young. We were 20, 24, 25. And we identified a problem. For us, the problem was that the young people were always in a problem mindset. It was, we have problem, we can find jobs, we can do that. No, it's the government is not doing what it should do for us, and on and on. And we thought that it could be great to be on a different mindset and to have a solution mindset, to be really solution oriented and to try to present solution for the problems that we have in our communities. And for us, the best way to do that, it was to create a TV show. The TV show was about young people in university who were going to work on problems and work with the communities for the sustainability of the solutions. And it's to go back to your question, it's like we created our jobs. So we love so much our job that sometimes it's not easy to find the balance. because we work a lot. It's our
Yeah.
passion, so we always want to be over 100% in everything we do. So it's not easy all the time. And for my personal journey, when I had my first children, I had to stop because it was really difficult. But it's not always easy to find the balance. But like I said, we created our job, so we really love the jobs we have.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk more about Social Change Factory and what you guys are doing in all the 18 different countries that you're in just a minute. But I want to give Blessing the opportunity to take his journey to us and just allow us to understand, how do you go about doing all of this stuff when you're trying to also maintain formal employment and grow professionally in your chosen discipline of specialization?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Messi, for that question. So it's quite an interesting question because I think, honestly, if I'm going to be very honest with you, it's quite difficult to maintain that balance. Of course, life presents you with so many things to do. You have to work, you have to pursue other things. And so that balance itself can be quite difficult. And even when you extrapolate it, for example, to the student days, it's even more difficult because you now have exams. And so that also is another level of difficulty on its own. But one thing that has really exemplified my life, I would say, is the aspect of service. I've always believed that really everything we do in life should be about service, should be about serving people. And one of the reasons why I actually became a medical doctor was because I wanted to serve the people. But early on in my, of course, career and even in my medical school, I realized that service really goes beyond you just being there for people who are sick, but service.
I'm wondering if it's me or if it's Blessing. Aram, do you see Blessing?
No, it's blessings.
Okay. Well, while we strive to get Blessing back, this is what I love about these international virtual meetings. You just never know what happens. And so while we're waiting to get Blessing back, Blessing, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I've just had I received a call, unfortunately. Yeah, but I'm
Okay.
back. Yeah, I hope
Yeah.
I'm
So you
audible.
were
Uh,
talking about the balance in
oh
especially
yeah,
when you as a student and finding time to do your civic engagement efforts.
yeah. So that itself can be quite difficult and can be quite challenging, as I was saying. So I was basically saying one thing that really stands out for my life is the aspect of service. I personally believe that life is about service, about offering a service. And this service can be in different capacities. It can be serving as a leader, for example, it can be representing a minority group, be representing people that have got no voice. And really, that's what I believe service is about. And so early on, very in my childhood, I took up various leadership roles. For example, in my secondary school, I was actually class captain for every class I entered into for 5 years. And my friends kept voting for me. They kept bringing me back because they really saw that I had that desire to be able to serve them. And of course, not only did I have the desire, but I was serving them equally quite good. And so transitioning to university as well, I basically continued with that service. I joined student politics. I also served in the Students' Union as Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So that in itself involved me speaking for people who were disadvantaged, speaking for people who had no voice. It involved me standing up for injustices that I was experiencing, that I was seeing happening right before me. So that itself was how I began engaging civically. And then from there, I was able to identify certain passions that I was passionate about. I really saw that within my space, I was able to identify certain things that I feel I could speak about, non-communicable diseases, the aspect of tobacco control, and all these issues that I spoke about. So I was able to identify a cause. And one thing that I also did when I finished my university was that I realized that mental health was becoming a very huge challenge here in Zambia, in that we saw so many suicide cases. And immediately I saw that, I was compelled to be able to do and uh, act on it. And so quickly I applied for a grant under the Global Change Makers, which I won. And I was able to do some community sensitization around the topic just to see how best people could understand the aspect of mental health. So that balance itself can be quite difficult, but the key is to identify what is your core purpose or what is your core value. And for me, I realized that my core value is service, and I was meant to serve. And so everything that I do, I ask myself, am I serving people? If I'm serving people, am I serving them to the best of my ability? Yes, at the hospital, I've got patients to serve, but I also understand that I'm a young person, and young people themselves face so many challenges, so face so many inequalities, face so many problems that I also feel I can be able to represent them. And so it's about asking yourself also, what really can you speak for? What can you stand on? And I think for me, that would be my response towards the aspect of balancing. It can be quite difficult, but just you being able to identify what your core purpose, your core value is, goes a long way.
Awesome. So you actually said something that was just such a sweet spot in order for us to transition to another aspect of civic engagement, which it can be expensive to participate in all of these things. Passion is great, having a serving attitude is great, but at the end of the day, there's always the question of money. There's always the question of how do I support these things? And so let's talk about that. How have you guys been able to support your civic engagement efforts, whether it's through funding, philanthropic donations, and all of those things? And what advice do you have for someone who's in that space of, I know what I'm passionate about, but I don't have the money to fund the things that I want to do. How do I go about doing this?
So for us in the beginning, it was really love money. It was our relatives, our friends, our family. They helped us to do the action that we wanted to do. And then when we created the organization, we started to knock on doors to try to have some international or national partner that could help us do our activities. I think we had chance. We were lucky because it's not easy to have partners, and when you're young, it's really not easy at all because they don't trust you easily. It's not it was not easy. But
Yeah.
we had the chance to have partners who trusted us and who gave us our first big grant because it was $200,000 for our first activity. So we started with that, and we had to show that we can trust young people to lead. And
Yeah.
yeah.
So Aram, before Blessing jumps in terms of funding, because he also talked about the small grant that he got. How do you approach people to ask for money? Like simple question. How do you even start asking? How do you build that rapport? Because that's so important.
I think we had people who introduced us to meet the partners. So this
Yeah.
is why the network also is important.
Right.
And and then when you go, you have to be prepared. You have to have your deck with your project, what you want to do, how you will do it, how much do you need, what will be the impacts, etc. And you have to be confident when you present what you want to do.
Yeah.
And you go with the with all the writing the proposal and all those things. But when you meet the people, I think you really have to be ready and ready to answer all the questions they will ask you, and be able to show that they can trust you.
Absolutely. And we'll come back and digest that even more. But Blessing, what do you have to add to that? How do you go about securing funding and support? Because it can be expensive. Yes, you want to go somewhere and do all of these activities. You have a plan on how you can improve people's lives. But if you don't have money, it's just a dream. So how do you go about financing some of the work?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Messi, for that question. I think any conversation that has no aspect of money is not a conversation worth having. And I love the fact that you've now asked that question because I think we don't have really achieved the purpose of this conversation without talking about the aspect of funding, which I feel for me is very cardinal, because passion can only take you so far. You definitely need resources to be able to carry out certain projects that you want to carry out. And it's really the biggest challenge that I've faced in my career so far, and in everything that I've done, that money is quite difficult to find. And especially when you're starting out as a young person, it's not rewarding at all. Like, yes, you're taught to volunteer, but you can only volunteer up to a certain point. There's a time when you now need to fend for yourself. You now need to have resources to take care of yourself and to create change and impact. And so this really has been a very big challenge, and it's something that I've seen within myself. But I always tell young people and people that I always speak to every time that the first step is to, of course, have an idea. Once you've got this idea, and once you have conceptualized how best you'd love to actualize this idea, have the idea written down somewhere. So develop a concept note. So every idea that you have, write down a concept note, save it somewhere, and then of course make use of social media platforms. There are quite a number of opportunities that are advertised on various social media platforms like LinkedIn. You could make use of that to search for opportunities for funding. So for example, the one that I got, the grant I got from the Global Change Makers, so I found it on LinkedIn. So I found that on a particular day that posted that they wanted people to give some grants to carry out certain projects in the communities. But first, they wanted people to undergo some form of training in project management, which was a self-paced kind of training, and it was to be done virtually. And so I jumped on this program, did the course and project management. And then after that, I qualified to then apply for funding. So I then got this idea which I had, which was around mental health, and of course around how best we can reduce the prevalence rate of suicide, particularly here in Zambia. And of course, my focus being Lusaka, because it's the most popular city and it's the capital city, of course. So I thought we could be able to create more impact if we did this actual project within Lusaka. So I wrote down the concept note, and when I got to apply, I uploaded this concept note. And then from there, I was taken to the next stage, which was an interview. So basically, they asked me to explain what the project was about, what I was planning to do, what was my estimated impact, how many people was I targeting to reach. And so all these things, I thought about them, and I thought to say it would be best if I worked, for example, in hospitals, because I'm coming from that particular setting. But then I'm also quite passionate about community work and community service. And so I think the best would be to see how best I could do it within the communities. So for me, it was about taking healthcare services as close as possible to the communities, so that we really bridge the gap of people having to walk long distances, for example, to access these health services, people having to spend so much money to access these health services. So my project was around how best we can take these services as close as possible to the communities. But of course, things changed along the way. After I got the grant, I then incorporated the aspect of using TV and radio to, of course, increase impact and reach larger masses and populations. And so I also engaged in radio and TV interviews, raising awareness on these particular issues. And so that's how I got my first grant. So it was a build up, really. It was a build up from you going out on social media, looking for these opportunities. Then, of course, you also being able to network, because some of these opportunities will basically come from you networking, basically come from you meeting someone who's going to share this opportunity. And I've actually noticed that I've been able to get some funding as well, just through networking and meeting various people from different places.
Awesome. So let's dive more into that, because it all sounds great. It all sounds great. But for some of our viewers, even the idea of developing a business proposal or a concept note may be something that they don't have any experience with. How do you go about building a business proposal for a funding agency? What types of information need to be included? And how do you make sure that whatever you're proposing kind of aligns with the priority areas of the organization that you're targeting for funding?
All right, that's a very good question, Dr. Messi. So the first thing, as I said, that you have to do is have a concept note. So a concept note is basically a one pager, I would say. Just you writing your idea down. That helps you not forget the idea, and also that helps you look back at it. Let's say in 2 years, because obviously you not get funding right there and then. Sometimes you may have an idea today, but probably you may only notice that you only find that there's funding for this idea maybe 2 years later. So it's always good to have it written down. A simple one pager would do, probably with an introduction, you introducing the idea, what are the objectives of this idea, what do you intend to do with this idea, coming up also with a rough budget, how much would you need to be able to actualize this idea, as you are thinking about it in that moment. So a concept note is basically a start. Then from there, depending on what opportunities come, so of course, different organizations have got different ways of how they want you to apply for these things. Others will give you a template already, so you basically have to fill in that template. But from what I've noticed, for most templates, probably they'll ask you for an introduction, they'll ask you for objectives, they'll ask you for a background, yeah, they'll ask you, of course, for a budget. So I think those are the basics that you just need to have at least ready every time.
Aram, what can you add to that conversation?
I think if people want to learn how to do a concept note or things like that, Google is our friend.
Yeah, I love Dr. Google.
Yeah, and
YouTube too. I mean, there's so many videos on YouTube on things that you would not even think about, right?
Yeah, and yes, and they can find ways to do it and try to, you know, build their project, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and try to estimate the budget.
So I like this saying that there's nothing new under the sun, right? So in a lot of the areas that we want to be engaged civically, you will find that there's other organizations or other people that are doing similar work or something that is tangential to what you're doing and so on and so forth. How do you differentiate yourself and how do you bring innovation to your work so that you start becoming the expert and the go-to people for that area that you have chosen? Because there could be 10 other people or 5 other organizations doing similar work, but how do you bring innovation and differentiation so that you become the person when somebody thinks of mental health? They want to think blessing. When somebody thinks of social justice, they want to think of Aram. How do you go about with that differentiation and brand building as well as innovation infusion in what you're doing?
So for us, it's really the edutainment. Because we invest in the human capital of young people, but we want to create content that will be interesting for them also. And we always want to listen and understand their needs and their aspirations. We don't want to just come with what we want to do. We really want to listen to them and then co-create programs or activities involving them so it could respond their needs. So when we describe our work, we really are with the right frequency. This is what we call all the studies that we do, the dialogue sessions, the focus groups, or the sector studies. It's a work that we do to be able to listen to the young people. And we have the Hummingbird Factory. I don't know if all the people know the allegory of the hummingbird.
I was just going to tell you to just go ahead and explain it as if nobody knows what you're talking about.
Yes. So our work is based on the allegory of the hummingbird. So it says that there were fire in the forest and all the animals were here, they were afraid and they were doing nothing. And the hummingbird started to go take some water and try to end the fire, stop the fire. And one of the animals told him, but hummingbird, what you're doing is useless. You will never be able, you know, to stop the fire. And he said, I know, but I'm doing my part. And the story, the allegory say that all the animals started doing their parts and together they stopped the fire, they ended the fire. So we call ourselves the Hummingbird Factory because we know that we cannot change the world and, you know, bring solution to all the problems of our community. but we can do our part. We can bring some solution. We can try to make a change, and we can be change makers. So that's what we call the Hummingbird Factory. And for us, it's really be able to unveiling the latent capabilities and aspiring community leadership within every young people. And then we have some trainings, a lot of trainings that we do with them because it's really important for us. We try to, you have some soft skills and some skills that you don't learn at school that we want to teach them. And our innovation lies in the method that we have in the multi-channel approach, which combines face-to-face training with media, internet, and social network. And then this is what we call the new narratives. For us, it's important to tell a beautiful and positive story of Africa.
I love that. Can we just pause there? Can I just interject myself? I think, we always say that the person who tells the story has the ability to change perspectives and what the narrative looks like. And I think that the narrative has to be told in a way that is optimistic. Not that we're neglecting all the bad things that are happening on the continent. We understand those things, but they should not overshadow all the positive that the continent has to offer. And so we have to be the voice that tells our story in a positive light. And I was just listening to a podcast actually by Chimamanzi, and I was like, she was talking about the power of the single story. And I'm like, when you hear a single story and a single narrative, your worldview is shaped by that. And we have to be very intentional in how we present the story of Africa and the story of the world in general, and what Africans have to bring to the plate, because a lot of the times that story has been told for us. And so people have these expectations of what we can and cannot do. So I'm sorry to interject myself there, but I was just like, yes, 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 let's tell our story. So over to you.
Yes, it's really that we have to tell beautiful and positive stories,
Yeah.
also to show role models.
Mhm.
And we do that by highlighting solution, creating inspirational storytelling, and also producing engaging media content.
Absolutely. Blessing, how do you differentiate yourself from what everybody's doing, and how do you bring innovation to your work?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Messi, for that question. So I think really there's so many people who are doing the work that we're doing, as you've said, and in any space you're going to get into, you find other people who have probably been in that space for longer than you have been. But key for me, firstly, is in trying to establish yourself. In the beginning, you want to collaborate with some of these organizations. By collaborating, you also then be able to identify some of the challenges that you're facing, some of the weaknesses or some of the gaps in your own work. It's only through collaboration that we will be able to see some of those particular issues. So I'll give you an example of the organization that I'm currently working with, one of them, which is Very Relevant Africa. So one thing that we had realized was that there was a leadership gap, particularly in our country, Zambia, and even on the African continent. I think we saw that many young people are not included in leadership processes, and that, of course, is at all levels of governance. I mean, from cabinet, even going down to community level, you find that there are very few young people that really are in leadership spaces. And so we began asking ourselves, what could be some of the reasons why young people are not finding themselves in some of these spaces? And one of them, one of the reasons that we found was the aspect of no one really teaches you how to be a leader. They expect that you're just going to grow into it. But we felt that I think it's high time that we began imparting leaders with the skills that we need. And even when we talk about civic engagement, we can't talk about civic engagement minus us talking about the civic engagement skills or the skills that you're going to need to engage civically. For example, young people need public speaking skills. Young people need critical thinking skills. They need transformational leadership skills. So all these are very cardinal when it comes to civic engagement. And so when we saw that, we saw an opportunity for us to be able to create a leadership academy. And so we formed this leadership academy and asked and told ourselves to say our mandate is going to be training young people and ensuring that we offer young people 21st century skills, because we cannot solve 21st century problems with 19th century skills. We need to ensure that young people are able to use the current skills to solve current problems. And so this is where our vision began. And so we enrolled the first set of young people, which was close to 200, and we trained these young people in leadership. Of course, areas like personal branding, areas like how to come up with an elevator pitch, areas like how to identify a problem, how to create a solution for a particular problem. And so we began growing in that area. But of course, in the beginning, we did collaborate with quite a number of organizations. We asked them to send through the young people so we could build their capacity. But then what really helped us, for me, is the aspect of branding. And I really can't emphasize how important branding is. It's really going to help you stand out, because quite a number of people are doing a lot of things, but most of them have not really invested so much in branding, in marketing, in putting themselves out there. And if you look at even the current conversation we have with you, Dr. Messi, the Fireside chat, I could really see just how important branding is and the power of branding. Just you coming up with a poster, you being able to share it on various media platforms. That in itself reaches out to so many people and helps you stand out. I've only known you through organizing of this conversation, but because of how you've branded yourself, how you branded the Fireside chat itself, I have now have an idea of what it's about, and here I am speaking towards it. So even as we are trying to innovate, let's use the tools that we have at our disposal. We have artificial intelligence now. How best can we position ourselves, for example, to be able to take advantage of that? We have other things like how to create posters. We've got all these soft skills, graphic designing. So all these actually, we have to be able to use them if we want to stand out. We cannot stand out if we're still going to be a paper model type of organization where we have to write letters. We don't have a social media page. We're not going to grow. Not going to stand out like that. So it's about us being able to use some of these simple skills that's really going to help us stand out. Dr. Messi, thank you.
Awesome. I love that you bring up the issue of we have to have skill sets, because just like in any profession, if you're going to say you're going to be a lawyer, there's certain basic skill sets that you need to have to be successful as an attorney. If you're going to be a medical doctor, there's certain specific skills that you need to have, like fundamental skills that you need to have. And I know you brought up the issue of public speaking and branding. But Aram, in your experience, what other skill sets are needed to be able to be successful in this space?
For me, it's really determination and commitment, because it's not easy. When you want to do something and you don't have the means to do it. So you really have to be engaged and believe in your vision and be able to have people around you that will take this journey with you to help support you and to believe in this vision. Also, I think you need perseverance also, because as I said, it's really a marathon to, know, having the time to be consistent and and also like Blessing says, the branding is important, and I think in the area that we are living now, you have to be in social medias, you have to have your branding, you have to communicate about what you do, and you have to be, you can be engaged in empowering young people. You can be engaged to about the environment. There's so much. That topic or themes where you can be involved, but you have to communicate about that. So the ecosystem will know that, I know a Blessing, he's engaged in mental health or in other kind, and he's a doctor. And if I have to think about Blessings if I want to do these activities, or I can recommend Blessings because he's doing that. I think when you see him in the social media, he seems to be an expert in what he's doing, etc. And but Blessing has to build that. I mean, no one will come to build that for Blessing. So I really think it's really important to, you know, be present because it's the world that you are living now.
So this is so amazing. I'm loving the conversation. By the way, I'm enjoying this so much because it's practical examples, practical skill sets, practical do's and don'ts of what it takes to be successful in this space. And one of the things that has come up in this conversation is the issue of collaboration. And so collaboration, a lot of the times, people are scared to collaborate because they're scared that somebody will run away with their idea. And this has happened when, you know, people have shared their idea with someone in hopes that they will be able to collaborate and build bigger impact together, and then somebody runs away with your ideas. How do you protect yourself from those types of things? And sometimes it will happen, but what are some of the strategic things that you can put into place that when you're sharing your ideas, that you're also protecting your ideas even when you're seeking collaborations? What do you guys have to say about that?
All right.
Blessing, you can start.
Okay. All right. I'll start. It's a very, very tricky question that you've asked, Dr. Messi, I should say. But of course, one thing that I believe in first, even before I go on to say what I wanted to say, is that the
Mhm,
sky is quite enough for all of us to fly in it. And
mhm,
so, even as we are seeking to collaborate, let's not be tempted to start competing, because competition itself, yes, it's healthy, but competition itself may not get us to where we want to get. I believe that
mhm.
competition can take you somewhere, but
Yeah.
collaboration will definitely take you the distance, because through collaboration, your work is made easier. And so, firstly, even when we talk about ideas, I think one thing that's very common that people do, of course, say, I'm scared that my idea will be stolen. And with other people, I've actually even come out and said, that was my idea, and my idea has been stolen. So one thing that you also want is that even as you are trying to develop an idea, or even as you're trying to, of course, write down or maybe come up with a particular cause, or when you have got this idea, I think the key really is to, I'm a Christian, so I
Mhm,
also believe that the key is to, of course, pray about it. And as you are praying about it, it's very important that in thinking the initial phase, just keep it to yourself, just keep talking about it, talking to God, of course, about it, and not going about sharing it with every person that you meet. So like you meet this person today, you share the idea, you meet the next person, you want to share the
mhm.
idea to the whole world before it's actually even has come into fruition. So
Right.
before it comes into fruition, you want to keep it to yourself. You want to be praying
Mhm,
about it. You want to be getting guidance. So, for example, I would say I'll give an example of myself. For example, my passion is around leadership. So, obviously, maybe let's say my goal in future is maybe to have a leadership university, for example. So,
mhm,
obviously, right now I don't have it, and so
mhm,
right now it's more like where I'm going. But of course, I can talk to one or two friends that I trust, of course, about the idea, but I can't go about blowing the idea to every other person, because then I'm actually opening up myself for failure. I'm also actually opening up myself for distractors, the people to discourage me, the people to not believe in me. And so I may not really get to where I intend to get. So even as we are seeking to collaborate, we want to be very strategic in who we share the idea with. It's okay to share the idea with someone that you know, obviously, this is a potential partner. This is someone that
mhm.
could invest probably in my vision, invest in my idea, put in some fund into the idea. So then you'll be able to share it with those people. But then there are those people, obviously, that you know that obviously these people are not really like, they're not people that you really see that could actually contribute anything to your idea. So you basically just want to stay away from those people and just focus on sharing it with those that you know will be very helpful in getting to where you want to get to. I hope I've tried to answer your question, Dr. Messi.
Absolutely, yes. Aram, what can you add to that? How do you protect your ideas while seeking collaborations?
So for me, I really believe that you can't lose what's yours. It's really
Mm,
something I believe. So I'm not afraid to share ideas or to collaborate with people, because if it has to happen, it will happen. And if it was something you were meant to, realize, it will happen. And I think that we never reinvent the wheel. So
mm,
we are always inspired by people, by ideas, by things that
mm,
we read, and yeah. And also in my work, we had to create a consortia
mhm,
of youth organizations in Senegal and also in Côte d'Ivoire. And it was to make more impact, to make our advocacy on youth issues more audible, and also to have bigger programs and raise more funds together. I
yeah,
think working together, it's really important. And even if our countries in Africa, we had to
yeah,
collaborate more. But I also think that it's an exercise in humility and trust, because it's
yeah,
not easy to be able to trust people to work. And sometimes the ego of people is, so it's not, but
yeah.
we have to do it. And if we don't do that, I mean, even if I think in a global aspect for
Mm.
our continent, we will not be able to make it.
Absolutely. Those are really valid points. So, a lot of us want to talk about impact. We want to talk about influence. And in this world of influencers that we're living in, outside of the number of followers and all of this stuff, how do you really measure the impact of your civic engagement efforts and opportunities that you're engaged in? Because at the end of the day, it's not just to be able to say we did XYZ, but what is a real impact in the communities? And what are some metrics that you guys use to measure impact? And what can you teach our viewers in terms of what are some practical ways that they can measure impact?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Messi. I think I'll go first for that question. Yeah. So one thing
Yeah.
that I always say is, especially with this era of social media, one thing that I always say is that leadership is not about numbers, but leadership is about influence. And
Mhm,
so even as we are trying to create impact, what should preoccupy our minds is changing lives, and not
mhm,
how many followers, how many followers do I have on social media, who's following me, who is what. Yes, that is
mhm.
important because it may
Yeah.
also kind of give you an example or kind of give you a picture of who is engaging with you and who you are reaching. But what should
Mhm,
preoccupy your mind is how many lives are you changing? And that is
mhm,
where we measure impact from. And I always love to say also that you may have so many followers on social media and have
mhm,
zero impact. You can have two
mhm,
followers on social media and have impact. So it means that you can impact two people that are following you, but you can have
mhm,
3 million followers, for example, and not impact any of them or not influence any of them in any
mhm,
particular way. So I think that is something that should preoccupy our minds. So I love to measure impact, first of all, by change stories.
mhm,
So when you, for example, execute a particular project, when you, for example, do something, create a solution within a community, I always love to record just how many people are actually sharing their stories. People would
mhm,
definitely share their stories. Where there's impact, people always speak about it. Either on
mhm,
social media, sometimes even in the comment section, people will be able to say certain things about you. So from that, I think you'll be able to measure exactly the amount of impact that you're having. Another thing that I
mhm,
also do is that I'm a radio and TV co-host, so I do get to be on radio and on TV. And even from there, I think you could also listen to some of the stories that people will be able to speak about what you're doing, the impact that you're creating in a
mhm,
particular program. And sometimes it's even inspiring that you are in Lusaka, for example, here in Zambia, and someone probably that is 1,000 kilometers away from you will still be able
mhm.
to pick up a phone and say, I'm following your program, I like what you're doing. So that
Right.
itself impacts. those are change stories that we must really take into account and really will show us the amount of people that we are reaching. For example, Dr. Messi, you can be out there in the US, but how many people, for example, from here in Zambia, in Senegal, how many people are going to reach out to you and say, I'm following your program, I was part of this program, and I've been impacted in this particular way. So personally, I believe that if you can even impact one life, if one person can ultimately or outrightly say that you have actually changed my life, for me, that is enough in itself. And that is what should really preoccupy our minds when it comes to impact. And of course, the other ways that you can use to measure impact by, of course, either the number of people that are following you on social media, number of people that are reacting to your posts, that also sends a particular message as to how many people that you're actually reaching. So I would say that different types of measuring impact could be virtual, but could also be through change stories, the number of people that are coming out that you have impacted, sharing the stories, sharing the testimonies. That could also signify, or that could also give you an idea of how many people you're actually impacting.
Awesome. Aram, how are you measuring impact in your work? I love change stories, by the way. That always pulls on my heartstrings when, out of the blue, somebody just says, Dr. Mumba, you have no idea how your programming, your book, your this, your that has really changed my life. Or, I'll make a social media post and somebody's like, oh, thank you so much for your encouragement. I really needed that encouragement today. It may not be a million people, but for me to know that somebody was encouraged by something that I just said, and when they were in a place of doubting or whatever, and that brought them more hope and just, stick to itiveness that they want to do this one more time. Those are the stories that just really pull on my heartstrings. So yeah, I love change stories as well. But Aram, go ahead. What are some of the ways that we measure impact in this type of work?
Yes, when you wrote the proposal, you have some indicators to reach. So it could be to train 20 young women. It could be anything. So you have the indicator, and this is a way of measuring if you have reached your goals. But for me, it's not easy to measure what you are investing when you work in human capital. It's not. I mean, the change that you want to bring can come 20 years later.
20 years later, right?
Or just after the first session, maybe this young man or woman will have to say, yeah, I can be that, I can do that. No. So it's not easy, and I think it's not something that we can measure simply.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point. And I think that if you're going to work in this space, you do have to have a mindset that some of the things that you're working towards, you may not even be able to see them in your lifetime, but to be able to be passionate enough to know that you're still changing the course of history, I think is really important. Just like, going back to maybe more of a political engagement type of thing, the freedom fighters that we had, they put their lives on the line. They didn't even know if they're going to enjoy the freedom for which they were fighting against colonization, but they did that for the benefit of others and maybe their grandchildren and so on and so forth. So sometimes in this work, you have to just have the mindset of understanding that some of the things that you're working toward, you may not even be able to see it in your lifetime, but you know that you're changing the course of history and that you're contributing to legacy and the history that is going to have positive outcomes in the future. So I love that you bring that up, Aaron. And now as we begin to wind down our conversation, we all love civic engagement, or at least the people who are speaking today. That's why we're here. We love civic engagement. We love social justice. We love this type of work. But there are challenges in this type of work. So in terms of just helping our audience understand what types of challenges should they expect, and how have you dealt with those challenges to keep yourself going in this area?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Messi, for that question. So challenges definitely exist. One thing that I live by is the fact that problems are inevitable, but we must be the inevitable solution to those inevitable problems. And that is actually what we stand by, even at Very Relevant Africa. This is actually what drives us and what motivates us. And this also
Yeah.
has become my own personal mantra in looking at life. And so the biggest challenge that we get to face, especially us in this space, is the aspect of
Mm,
funding.
yeah.
The aspect of funding, and I always keep emphasizing that it is very difficult to advocate on an empty stomach. It's very difficult to be able to speak for change on an empty
Mhm.
stomach. It is quite difficult, and so this is a challenge that we get to face. In that there are times when you have to just use your passion because funding may not actually be there for you to carry out the work that you're carrying. So that in
Mhm.
itself is a very, very huge challenge. There are times also when you have no one that wants to collaborate with you. So you've got no people that actually see you as a potential to collaborate with. So that in itself is also a challenge that we get to face even in the work that we're doing. Lack of support as well. The times when you're starting out, you want someone to support you, you want big organizations to be able to support you, even not through funding, but even other means of support. I believe support goes beyond money, but
Yeah,
even just the aspect of mentorship itself. So you find that
exactly.
there are very few people that actually would be willing to mentor you, would be willing to take you up. So you find that you will be on this lonely path, I should say,
Mhm.
which is a very huge challenge on its own and may be very difficult for you to navigate around. So you must also be able to look out for some of these challenges, even as you're trying to navigate around this space. And then, of course, there are also other challenges that could be related, of course, that are personal. So, for example, there are
Mhm.
times when you wake up and you lack motivation. That is very
Yeah.
common. It's very normal. You just ask
Mhm.
yourself to say, where am I going with this? And as you've
Mhm.
said, Dr. Messi, that some of the work we're doing today may actually only bear its fruits 50 years from now when we are no more. And
Mhm.
sometimes the patience really is not there. Sometimes you want to
Yeah.
work on something and you want to see the results there and then, but then you don't get to see the results. And so you lose motivation, you lose interest, and so these it's themselves are challenges. So these are intra battles that you have to fight every other day as you are trying to see how best you can keep yourself going. There are times when you feel like giving up, and there are times when you just feel like you should stop whatever it is that you're doing and focus on other things, probably to give you more money. And so, as I said, it's challenges really are quite vast. Some of them could be intra within yourself, and of course, others could be external, as I've said, with regards to funding and lack of support.
Amazing. Aram, what additional comments do you have?
Yeah, maybe just the well-being,
Mhm.
because sometimes it's you are so passionate about what you do and you want to give and you
Yeah.
don't think about you don't think about your
Mhm.
own health and
Yeah.
how to preserve it. So yeah, I think it's important to you to try to put your own well-being,
Mhm.
because if you are not in a good in a healthy position, you will not
Mhm.
be able to do what you want to do. So it's important, and to not listen to the people who will try to discourage you,
Mhm.
because they don't know why you want
And
to
there'll
do
be many.
it. So yeah, do not listen to them and try to put your well-being in at a good place.
Yeah. I like that because, there's a saying that you can only give from what you have. And if your tank is empty, there's nothing that you can give. And a lot of people who are service oriented, which is what you will see a lot in people who have a tendency to have civic engagements and social justice as part of their platforms, is that they're constantly giving. But I like how you bring up the issue of you have to also think about yourself and pouring into yourself, whether it's just taking a break, making sure that you get enough sleep, or taking care of your mental health needs, your physical needs, and so on and so forth. It's really important to invest all your time in your and your efforts in all the other people that you're working with or working for, or the people that you're serving or the causes that you're serving, and then put yourself at the back burner. But you will not be able to do your work effectively if your physical health is not intact and if you're not doing well mentally yourself. So I love that you bring that up as one of the things that we have to think about when we're working in this space. And so, just to kind of close this out, I'm asking you guys to give me just what are your top 3 pieces of advice for someone who's wanting to work in this space? And let me just remind our viewers while they're doing this, if you have any specific questions that you want answered, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll be able to read it to our panelists today, and then we'll go from there. So once you give us your top 3, if there are questions in the chat, we'll answer those questions, and then just any closing remarks that you guys have. So Aram, what are your 3 top choices in terms of pieces of advice for someone who's either already in this space or thinking about being in this space?
For me, you always have to want to learn. Do not be sure of you have to be confident. It's important, but you have to, I think we always can learn something. And you really have to be in a position to be open, to learn, to receive advices for other people that have more experience than you, and to be curious, and also to go to talk to people working in the area that you want to work, to know, just to ask questions and to know what is it to be in this area, what are the difficulties. I think people are always open, or most of the time open, to talk about what they are doing. I often read that we have to be grateful for closed door, and I think it's really important to keep that in mind. As I said, you can't lose what is not yours, and if you really want to do that, it's what you really want, you have to really be engaged. Not to be discouraged when a door is closed, because at the beginning, sometimes you have a lot of closed doors, but then you will have a window open or something like that. And maybe the third will be the well-being, because I think it's really important. It's something that we do for the love that we have for people or for our communities, but you also have, to think about you, to just be in a mental, for your mental health to be good, and also your physical health.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you. Blessings. What are your top 3 pieces of advice?
All right. Thank you so much for that. Before I even give my top 3 pieces of advice, I want to just share with you some of my favorite quotes and things that I live by. The first one is by Nelson Mandela, who says that freedom is an ideal I'm prepared to live for, but if need be, freedom is an ideal I'm prepared to die for. So the first thing that really I would love to say is be able to identify that one thing that you're willing to die for, that one thing that you're willing to stand for. It's also Martin Luther King who says that our lives begin to end when we remain silent about things that matter. So identify what matters to you, identify what you are not willing to remain silent for. That's the first thing. The second thing is
to
just
say
start.
that he's happy.
Oh yeah.
I saw that. I was like, yay.
Yeah, and the second thing is just start. Just start. Just start with whatever you have, whatever resources that you have at your disposal. Start. If it is social media that you have, if it's a phone and a bundle, you can start. Start on social media. That is what you have. Just start. Don't wait for you to have so many resources, for you to have a lot of money before you can create change. Start with what you have. That would be my second thing. Then the last thing would be the change. Be the change. Of course, the world is crying for change makers. And so be able to step up and be the change. You will fail many times, but each of those times, be willing to pick yourself up and know why you started in the first place. So those would be my pieces of advice, Dr. Momo.
Tell me, what was your first one again? Because we were chatting through Mandela and all of that. Tell me again, what
Yeah,
was your
yeah. So the first one was you being able to identify what matters to
Mhm.
you, or you being able to
Okay.
identify what you'd be willing to die for example, what you'd be
Yeah.
willing to come to fruition before your life ends. That is the first one. The
Yeah.
second one was you being the change. So be the
Mm-hmm.
change. The world is crying for change makers. So you must be
Yeah.
the change. Oh, that was the third one. And the second one was just start. So with whatever
Just
resources that
stop.
you have, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
with whatever resources at your disposal, just start. If it's a phone and a bundle, start there. Start with what you have, because that is all
Yeah.
that you've got. If it's a voice, that is what you have. If it's a
Mm-hmm.
talent, that is what you have. Start with that particular thing. That was my second thing. And of course, the last thing is you being the change and you knowing that, yes, you can fail, but you must be the change because the world is crying for change makers.
Mm. Amazing. So, Gandhi said we must be the change that we want to see in the world. So
Yeah.
we just can't, and Aram, you started with this.
My favorite quote. Yeah.
It's okay to identify problems. It's okay to know where things are not working, but we have to take it upon ourselves to be the change that we want to see in the world. We're supposed to be solution focused. Yes, it's okay to point out the things that are not working, but once you do that, then what, right? Be part of the solution, be part of the people who are bringing the change in the world that we want to see. So this has been such an amazing conversation. In closing, what have we not talked about yet that you just feel you're itching to tell our audiences before we wrap up? And then we'll go into our closing remarks. Aram, we can start with you.
Mm, maybe just like Blessing said, just start. Yeah, I think if you don't start, you will never be able to show to the world what you
Mhm.
want to do or to have the impact that you want in your community. So
Yeah,
yeah, just start with anything you have. Just start. Yeah, I think it's really important.
amazing. Blessings, what have we not touched on that you just think is absolutely necessary for our audiences to know when it comes to civic engagement?
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy. So we've touched on virtually, I think, everything. But one thing that I always love emphasizing is that we really love to say all the rosy things, and yet
Mhm.
we pay a blind eye to the bad things. And so I
Mhm.
think it's important for us to be able to realize and recognize the fact that sometimes it does get difficult, and you do reach a point where you feel like giving up. And sometimes you're going to fail. That is for a fact. You advocate for something and you fail at it, but the most
Mhm.
important thing is that we must always pick ourselves up. We must always
Yeah.
keep ourselves going, always keep ourselves motivated. Even when we fail, failure is definitely going to come at some point in
Mhm.
everything that we're doing. But the key really is that we must always push ourselves forward, and we must really always have it in the back of our minds why we started in the first place. I think for me, that is something that we must emphasize, that everyone does fail. Even the greatest of leaders at some point
Mhm.
might have failed. And even for us who are here, yes, we're sharing some of these successes, but we have not gone deep into detail to tell you how many times we've been rejected, how many times
Yeah.
we've failed before. So that is not something we've talked about, but that is something that we experience in the background. And so whenever you
Mhm.
experience these things, don't feel like you're the first person to fail. Don't feel like you are actually the last person to fail, and don't feel like you can't pick
Yes.
yourself up again. Yeah, so
And don't
that would
think
be
this
my
is the
last thing.
last time you will fail. Failure is a part of life. My dad used to say failure is how you learn what doesn't work. So if you don't fail, you don't know that that is actually not how to do XYZ. So never be afraid of failure. And I love that you bring that up, Blessing, and you're so right. All of us fail at so many things. And yes, we've highlighted the successes and the good things about civic engagement and just life in general. We're going to have areas where we don't achieve our goals, and that's fine. The most important thing is to remind ourselves why we started in the first place. I wrote some time back on one of my social media pages that when you're running low on energy and you're feeling like giving up, remind yourself why you started in the first place, because most of the time that will pick you back up and say, you know what? I know why I started this. Today may not be feeling like a good day and it may be not feeling like we're winning, but it's an important day to find that inner strength and that perseverance that Aram also talked about. So thank you so much for being here. This has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And a lot of the times people don't realize how civic engagement can be part of your personal growth and also your professional growth. And I think that through the conversations that we've had today, we've been able to shed some light on how these civic engagement opportunities can help you grow as a person, can help you have greater impact in the lives of people that you are serving, but also help you grow on a personal level. So thank you so much to my esteemed guests who are here today, Aram and Blessings. I always like to end by saying, please follow them on their social media pages. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook and LinkedIn and other platforms as well. So follow them and learn more about what they're doing. Support them. We all need support. And if there's something that they talked about and that just, made you think about a potential project that you may even want to be able to do with them, take this opportunity to reach out to them as well and say, hey, have you thought about XYZ? And that's one of the things that happens with this fireside chats is people learn about what others are doing and find areas and opportunities for collaboration and just networking and working together. So Blessing, thank you for being here. Aram, thank you for being here. Until next time, for our viewers, we'll be back in January for another exciting edition of our Fireside Chat. Be on the lookout for our promotional materials that will be coming in early January. If you are celebrating Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. If you're just in the holiday season, happy holidays, and I hope that you get some rest as well. And we hope to see you in the new year. Thank you so much for supporting us with the Fireside Chats this year. I can't believe 2023 is coming to an end. It's like it just started and it's coming to an end. I can't believe it. Like I was telling my husband, I remembered like January 2023 and thinking, oh my God, I have a lot of things to do. And it's like I blinked and we're in December. So I hope it's been a lovely year. I would challenge each of us to really take some time to think about what we want to do in 2024. What are some of the things that are important to us? And how do we intend to actualize our goals into turning them from just being goals, but into actual reality that we are living and experiencing? So, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you in the new year. Thank you so much for being here.